The cosmic expanse stretched before them like an endless obsidian canvas, splashed with luminous pinpricks of distant suns, their radiance filtering through the transparent observation dome of the Horizon Seeker. Captain Valen Mercer stood motionless, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he surveyed the void beyond. His face, etched with the remnants of countless interstellar campaigns, bore a jagged scar that bisected his right eyebrow and traced down to his jaw, a permanent reminder of the unpredictability of space exploration. His steel-gray eyes, which had witnessed the birth and death of stars, now reflected an uncharacteristic disquiet that troubled him. The mission directive had seemed straightforward when they'd left Earth's orbital station: navigate uncharted regions of the Cygnus Arm, document anomalies, and initiate diplomatic contact with any sentient species they encountered. Yet Valen had learned through bitter experience that simplicity in deep space was merely an illusion, a comforting falsehood that dissolved at the first sign of the extraordinary. Their sensors had detected something unprecedented just hours ago, an energy signature that defied classification. It pulsated with an almost organic rhythm, emanating from a nearby celestial body shrouded in swirling azure mists. The reading suggested not merely advanced technology, but something more profound: energy patterns that mimicked biological systems, as though the technology itself had achieved consciousness. "Your assessment, Lieutenant?" Valen asked, turning to face his second-in-command. Lieutenant Alara Jace approached the holographic display hovering between them, her analytical mind already dissecting the data streams. The projection illuminated her features in electric blue, highlighting the subtle metallic implants at her temples, remnants of the neural enhancement surgery she'd undergone after the Proxima incident. Though the cybernetics had restored her cognitive functions, she maintained the habit of adjusting non-existent spectacles, a phantom gesture from her previous life. "Fascinating," she murmured, fingers dancing through the holographic interface with practiced precision. "The atmospheric composition is remarkably Earth-compatible. Oxygen levels at 22%, nitrogen at 75%, trace elements within acceptable parameters." Her eyes narrowed as she expanded a particular reading. "Gravitational field matches Earth standard with minimal variance. Captain, it's almost as if it's waiting for us," Valen finished, the words tasting strange on his tongue. He rolled his shoulders, attempting to dislodge the prickling sensation crawling up his spine. 20 years traversing the stars had honed his instincts to a razor's edge, and every fiber of his being hummed with anticipation or warning. Too perfect, he thought, and in my experience, perfection in the cosmos is either an illusion or a trap. Nevertheless, their directives were clear. First Contact Protocol demanded investigation, regardless of personal misgivings. Within 3 hours, the descent vessel was prepped and launched, carrying a select team toward the mysterious world below. As they penetrated the thick atmospheric barrier, the landscape revealed itself in breathtaking splendor. Beneath them stretched terrain both alien and mesmerizing. Massive hexagonal formations of what appeared to be living crystal rose from the ground like architectural spires, their surfaces refracting sunlight into prismatic cascades. Winding rivers glowed with a subtle phosphorescence, their banks lined with vegetation that seemed to pulse in synchronized waves as though the entire ecosystem shared a single, massive heartbeat. They landed in a clearing near one of the smaller crystal formations, its facets shifting colors as their vessel approached. The landing party disembarked with practiced caution, weapons charged but lowered, sensors active, communications open. Valen stepped onto the alien soil first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, moss-like ground cover that emitted a faint chime with each footfall. The air tasted crisp, carrying unfamiliar scents that reminded him vaguely of ozone and cinnamon. Every sense heightened, he surveyed their surroundings, cataloging potential escape routes and defensive positions, a habit that had saved his life on 17 different worlds. The silence struck him first, not the absence of sound, but rather a deliberate stillness, as though the entire landscape were holding its breath. Then came the vibration, a subtle tremor rising through the soil into the soles of his boots, building in intensity until it resonated in his chest cavity. And then she appeared. She emerged from between two towering crystal pillars, moving with fluid grace that defied the constraints of gravity. She stood taller than any human, her height enhanced by an intricate headdress that crowned her elongated skull. Her skin radiated an opalescent glow that shifted between lavender and teal, depending on how the light caught her. Her eyes, three of them, arranged in a triangular pattern, were faceted like polished amethysts, pupils contracting vertically as she assessed the intruders. The garment she wore appeared to be composed of thousands of minuscule scales that rippled with her movements, creating an undulating effect that mesmerized and disoriented. At her waist hung an ornate device that could only be a weapon, its design suggesting both artistry and lethal functionality. Around her neck, suspended by an invisible force field, floated a crystalline pendant that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the surrounding vegetation. When she spoke, her voice cascaded over them like liquid crystal, melodic, multi-toned, and unmistakably threatening. "Touch me once and I shall erase your existence, human creature," she proclaimed, each word reverberating through the air with harmonic overtones. "Your presence disrupts the song of Lumina." The translation matrix in their comms struggled momentarily before adapting to her unique vocal patterns. Valen's team froze in place, weapons half raised, awaiting his command. But Valen himself remained transfixed, unable to tear his gaze from the alien being. Something about her triggered a response in him that transcended the rational, not merely fear or fascination, but a profound sense of recognition that defied explanation. She advanced, each step causing the moss beneath her feet to illuminate in concentric patterns. The crystal formations around them resonated in response, emitting tones that seemed to form a complex melody. As she drew closer, Valen instinctively retreated, not out of cowardice, but from a bone-deep understanding that proximity to this being carried consequences beyond physical danger. The pendant at her throat pulsed more rapidly, its glow intensifying to match the intensity of her third central eye. The air between them seemed to compress, charged with potential energy. She could obliterate us with a thought, Valen realized. And yet she's giving us warning first. Why? Finding his voice at last, he managed to rasp, "We come in peace, we mean no harm to your world." Her lips, a shade of deep indigo, curved into an expression that might have been amusement or contempt. "Intentions are vibrations that fade," she replied, tilting her head at an angle that emphasized her inhuman physiology. "Actions resonate eternally. Tell me, Star Wanderer, why have you breached the boundaries of Lumina?" Before Valen could formulate a response, Alara stepped forward, her analytical mind perhaps less susceptible to the alien's disconcerting presence. "We are explorers," she stated, her tone modulated to project calm certainty. "We seek to understand the cosmos and its wonders. Our presence here was driven by curiosity, not conquest. We detected your world's unique energy signature and came to learn." The alien shifted her triangular gaze to Alara, studying her with the focused intensity of a scientist examining a curious specimen. Without warning, she raised a six-fingered hand, palm outward. A pulse of energy, visible as concentric rings of violet light, erupted from her fingertips, striking the ground mere centimeters from Alara's boots. The impact left a perfect hemispherical depression in the moss, its edges crystallized and smoking. "Stand down," Valen barked as his team reactively raised their weapons. "Lower your arms, now!" Reluctantly, they complied, the tension palpable as static electricity in the air. Facing the alien once more, Valen squared his shoulders and met her triadic gaze directly. "If annihilation was your objective, we'd already be less than atoms. So I'll ask plainly, what do you want from us?" Her expression shifted subtly, the outer edges of her mouth lifting in what might have been approval. "Perceptive," she acknowledged, the harmonic layers of her voice modulating into a less threatening register. "Perhaps your species possesses more dimension than appearances suggest." With a gesture that resembled a conductor directing an orchestra, she dismissed the energy field that had been building around them. "You may address me as Zephyra, guardian of the seventh resonance. Speak your true purpose, human, before my patience attenuates." The intensity of her gaze never wavered as she assessed Valen, seemingly peering beyond physical appearance to something more fundamental. Every word she spoke carried weight, as though reality itself bent slightly to accommodate her utterances. Yet beneath her imperious demeanor, Valen detected something unexpected, a flicker of genuine curiosity, perhaps even intrigue. The realization emboldened him. "I'm Captain Valen Mercer," he responded, maintaining eye contact despite the disorienting effect of her triangular gaze. "We command the exploration vessel Horizon Seeker, dispatched to establish peaceful contact with civilizations beyond our known territories. Your world, Lumina you called it, registered energy patterns unlike anything in our extensive databases. We came to understand, not to interfere." Zephyr's center eye narrowed slightly. "Understanding requires context, Captain of the Void Ship. Your species has a resonance pattern of consumption and dominance. You claim benevolent intentions, yet your history vibrates with conquest. Why should your words carry substance?" Her accusation struck with precision, and Valen felt its impact in his core. Humanity's interstellar expansion had not always prioritized diplomatic finesse. Several early encounters with non-terrestrial species had ended in misunderstanding, conflict, or worse, exploitation under the guise of scientific inquiry. He inhaled deeply, weighing his response. Diplomatic platitudes would ring hollow to a being of her perceptiveness. "Because we've learned from our failures," he stated firmly, conviction strengthening his voice. "Humanity has evolved not just technologically but ethically. We bear the burden of our historical missteps, which is precisely why this mission prioritizes observation and communication over intervention. We seek exchange, not extraction." Alara stepped forward again, her analytical approach complementing his emotional appeal. "If you would permit us, Guardian Zephyra, we wish to demonstrate our sincerity through actions rather than assertions. Judge us by our conduct, not by preconceptions." Zephyra regarded them both for a moment that stretched like infinity, the crystalline structures around them humming at a frequency that seemed to resonate with the pendant at her throat. Finally, she inclined her head in a gesture that was neither fully acceptance nor rejection. "Prove yourselves, then," she pronounced. "But know this, if your vibrations disrupt the harmony of Lumina, I shall not hesitate to silence them permanently." Her gaze locked onto Valen's with unsettling intensity. "And you, resonant one, your energy pattern fluctuates distinctively. What drives such amplitude?" Valen opened his mouth to respond but found himself momentarily speechless. How could he articulate the complex blend of duty, curiosity, and something indefinable that pulled him toward this alien world and its enigmatic guardian? Instead, he offered the simplest truth he could distill. "I believe in second chances, for everyone, including civilizations that have lost their way." Her expression softened fractionally, a subtle shift that transformed her countenance from threatening to merely formidable. "Bold vibrations," she commented, something almost resembling amusement coloring her tone. "Let us discover if they remain coherent under pressure." With fluid grace, she turned and gestured toward a path that seemed to materialize between the crystal formations. "Follow if you dare. The chamber of resonance awaits, as does your evaluation." Without waiting for acknowledgement, Zephyra moved forward, her form seeming to blend with the shifting light patterns of the crystal structures. Valen exchanged a meaningful glance with Alara, whose subtle nod confirmed their shared assessment. Proceed with caution, but proceed nonetheless. As they entered the crystalline forest, the environment transformed around them. The ambient temperature dropped perceptibly, while the air grew thick with particles that sparkled like suspended stardust. Each crystal they passed emitted unique tonal signatures, creating an ambient symphony that seemed to respond to their emotional states. Smaller life forms, creatures that resembled a cross between hummingbirds and jellyfish, flitted between the crystal pillars, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescence. Zephyra moved ahead of them with ethereal grace, occasionally touching specific crystal formations that responded by intensifying their glow and altering their harmonic emissions. Valen noted that the patterns seemed to form a complex language, with each interaction conveying information throughout the living network. His mind raced with questions about Zephyra, about the luminary civilization, about the strange connection he felt to this place despite its alien nature. Most puzzling was his reaction to Zephyra herself. Beyond the natural caution her power inspired, he experienced an inexplicable pull toward her, as though some fundamental aspect of his being recognized something in hers. Focus on the mission, he chided himself, Anthropomorphizing alien motivations is the first step toward disastrous misunderstanding. Yet even as he maintained his professional detachment, he couldn't dismiss the sensation entirely. There was something here, something significant that transcended standard first contact protocols. They journeyed deeper into the crystal forest until the formations grew so dense that they formed corridor-like structures, channeling the group toward what appeared to be a massive central hub. As they approached, Valen gasped involuntarily. Before them loomed a colossal crystal structure that dwarfed all others, a perfect dodecahedron suspended above a circular platform, rotating slowly on its axis. The crystal radiated energy in pulsating waves, its surface inscribed with complex geometric patterns that shifted and rearranged continuously. "The heart of Lumina," Zephyr announced, her voice resonating with reverence. "The source of our collective consciousness and the anchor of our world's harmony. Few outsiders have beheld it and continue to exist." She turned to face them, her triangular eyes glowing with increased intensity. "This is where you shall be tested, humans. The heart sees beyond physical forms to the essential vibration patterns of your being. It will determine your worthiness or your dissolution." With that ominous pronouncement, she stepped aside, allowing them access to the platform beneath the floating crystal. As they cautiously advanced, the ground beneath their feet began to glow with intricate patterns that mirrored the designs on the heart itself. Valen exchanged a wary glance with Alara, silently calculating their options. Retreat seemed impossible now, and something told him that Zephyra's test would proceed with or without their willing participation. Before they could discuss strategy, movement erupted from the periphery of the clearing. Tall, slender figures emerged from behind crystal formations, being similar to Zephyra in basic morphology, but with variations in coloration and the ornate armor that adorned their bodies. They surrounded the humans in a fluid formation that suggested both ceremonial precision and combat readiness. One of the beings approached Zephyra, communicating in a language that sounded like overlapping crystal tones, a symphony of mathematical precision rather than mere words. Though the translation matrix couldn't decode it fully, Valen gathered that they questioned Zephyra's decision to bring outsiders to this sacred location. Zephyra responded with a cascade of harmonic tones that silenced the questioner, then addressed the humans once more. "The Council of Resonance questions your presence," she explained, switching back to a language their systems could translate. "According to our ancient protocols, you must undergo the trial of harmonics. If you succeed, you earn the right to dialogue. If you fail—" She left the consequence unspoken, though the subtle shift in the crystal tones surrounding them conveyed the implication clearly enough. "What does this trial entail?" Valen asked, maintaining a composed exterior despite the tension coiling within him. Zephyra's lips curved in that not-quite smile. "Synchronization with the true nature of Lumina. The heart will transport your consciousness to a realm that reflects your deepest dissonances. There you must achieve harmony or be consumed by chaos." Before Valen could request clarification, the platform beneath them surged with energy. Tendrils of crystalline light erupted upward, enveloping the humans in a cocoon of scintillating force. The world around them dissolved into prismatic fragments, reality itself seeming to shatter and reconstitute. When Valen's vision cleared, he found himself standing in an environment utterly unlike the crystal forest. A desolate wasteland stretched in all directions, the ground composed of fractured obsidian that reflected a sky churning with storms of impossible colors. The air tasted metallic, charged with potential energy that raised the hair on his arms. "Everyone still intact?" he called out, relieved to see his team materializing nearby, disoriented but unharmed. "Physically, yes," Alara responded, her cybernetic implants glowing brighter than usual as they struggled to process their surroundings. "But I'm detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. This place, it's not entirely physical. It appears to exist partially in a quantum superposition." Valen nodded grimly. "Stay alert. Form a defensive perimeter. Whatever this trial involves, I doubt it's—" A bone-chilling shriek cut through the air, silencing him mid-sentence. From beyond a ridge of jagged crystal, massive shapes emerged, creatures that defied biological classification. They resembled a nightmarish fusion of reptile and insect, their bodies composed of what appeared to be living shadow reinforced with crystalline exoskeletons. Multiple limbs ending in serrated appendages propelled them forward with unnatural speed, while compound eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. Discordance, a familiar voice announced from behind them. Valen spun to find Zephyra materializing like a ghost, her form semi-transparent, yet still radiating power. Manifestations of chaos that seek to disrupt the harmony. They are drawn to dissonance, particularly the kind that resonates within sentient beings. The creatures, discordance, paused their advance, heads swiveling in unison toward the humans. Their exoskeletons began to vibrate, emitting a sound that sliced through Valen's consciousness like jagged glass. "How do we fight them?" he demanded, raising his plasma rifle despite the suspicion that conventional weapons would prove useless against such entities. "You don't," Zephyra replied simply. "Combat generates further dissonance, which only strengthens them. To prevail, you must achieve harmony, internal and external." With that cryptic advice, her form faded further, becoming little more than an outline of luminous energy. "I can observe, but not intervene. The trial is yours alone." The discordants resumed their advance, moving with the coordinated precision of a hunting pack. As they drew closer, Valen felt a strange sensation, as though the creatures were somehow resonating with his own internal state, feeding off his tension and amplifying it. Harmony, not combat, he thought, forcing himself to lower his weapon, despite every instinct screaming against it. "Everyone, stand down," he ordered. "These things feed on our fear and aggression." His team stared at him in disbelief, but years of service under his command had built a foundation of trust that outweighed their immediate survival instincts. One by one they lowered their weapons, though their postures remained combat-ready. The discordants hesitated, their synchronized movements faltering momentarily. But then they surged forward again, apparently sensing the conflicted emotions still churning beneath the humans' outward compliance. "It's not enough," Alara realized aloud. "Our physical stance has changed, but our emotional resonance remains discordant." Valen nodded, mind racing through possibilities. If these creatures fed on disharmony, then perhaps— "Everyone, link hands," he commanded. "Focus on a single shared emotion. Not fear, not aggression, something harmonious." As the team formed a circle, joining hands despite their obvious skepticism, Valen closed his eyes and concentrated on projecting a sense of unified purpose. Not the adrenaline-fueled determination of combat, but something deeper. The fundamental reason they had all chosen to venture into the unknown. Curiosity, wonder, the desire to connect with something greater than themselves. At first, nothing happened. The discordants continued their advance, now mere meters away. But then, almost imperceptibly, the quality of the air changed. The metallic taste faded, replaced by something sweeter. The crystalline ground beneath them began to glow faintly, pulsing in rhythm with their shared focus. The lead discordant faltered, its many limbs suddenly uncoordinated. The others followed suit, their synchronized movement dissolving into confused individual actions. The dissonant shrieking they emitted shifted in pitch, becoming less aggressive, more uncertain. "It's working," Alara whispered, her eyes widening as the creatures began to retreat, their shadowy forms seeming to diminish in substance. Valen maintained his focus, channeling his concentration toward the unified field they had created. The glow beneath their feet intensified, spreading outward in concentric rings that transformed the obsidian ground into crystalline structures reminiscent of luminous forest. Where the waves of harmony touched the discordance, their forms seemed to dissolve, not violently, but as though reverting to a more fundamental state of energy. Within minutes, the creatures had completely dispersed, leaving behind only faint echoes of their dissonant frequencies. As the last discordant faded, the landscape around them began to shift. The stormy sky cleared, revealing a celestial panorama of impossible beauty, stars and nebulae in configurations no human telescope had ever captured. The ground solidified into a platform of pure crystal that hummed with harmonious vibrations. Zephyra reappeared before them, her form now fully corporeal. For the first time, her expression conveyed genuine surprise. "Impressive," she acknowledged, her triangular eyes studying them with new interest. Few species achieve harmonic resolution on their first encounter with the discordance. Perhaps there is more to humans than surface dissonance. Valen released his team's hands, though the sense of connection lingered. We understood the principle, he explained. Harmony versus discord, creation versus destruction. These are universal concepts, even if their manifestations differ across cultures. Zephyra's head tilted, her central eye focusing on him with particular intensity. Perhaps, or perhaps you, specifically, possess an unusual capacity for resonance adaptation. She stepped closer, the pendant at her throat pulsing in a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. Curious, very curious indeed. Before he could inquire about her observation, a tremendous roar shattered the momentary peace. The crystal platform beneath them trembled violently, fracture lines spreading outward from a central point. From these fissures erupted an entity so massive it defied comprehension. A behemoth composed of what appeared to be anti-light, its form constantly shifting between states of matter, yet maintaining a vaguely draconic silhouette. Where it passed, reality itself seemed to unravel, leaving void-like tears in the fabric of existence. Zephyra's expression transformed from curiosity to alarm. "The null harmonic," she hissed, genuine fear evident in her voice for the first time. "This is not part of the trial. Something has breached the protective resonance barriers." She turned to Valen, urgency overriding her previous detachment. "You must flee this realm immediately. Even I cannot guarantee your survival against such an entity." But Valen stood his ground, assessing the situation with the calm clarity that had preserved him through countless crises. "Running won't help if that thing is tearing apart the very space we'd use to escape," he observed. "Tell me what we're dealing with and how to neutralize it." For a moment, Zephyra seemed torn between protocol and pragmatism. Then, decision made, she gestured toward the creature's core, where a pulsating node of anti-light seemed to draw all surrounding energy into itself. "The null harmonic exists to consume dissonance, returning it to primal energy," she explained rapidly. "But something has corrupted its function. It now seeks to devour all frequencies, harmonic and dissonant alike. Its nucleus, the void core, must be realigned with the fundamental frequency of lumina." "And how exactly do we accomplish that?" Valen pressed as the entity continued its destructive advance, each movement leaving reality more fractured in its wake. Zephyra's hand moved to the crystalline pendant at her throat. "This contains a resonance key, a pure tone of Lumina's fundamental frequency. It must be brought into direct contact with the void core, but the approach would mean certain death for a luminary," Valen finished, understanding dawning. "But possibly not for a human, whose frequency pattern is already alien to this realm." Their eyes met in perfect comprehension, a plan forming between them without further words needed. Zephyra removed her pendant, the crystal glowing with intensified brilliance once separated from her body. "It will recognize you as its carrier for approximately 60 seconds before rejecting your foreign resonance," she warned, placing the artifact in his palm. "After that, it will begin to consume your life energy instead." Valen closed his fingers around the crystal, feeling its power vibrate through his entire being. 60 seconds should be enough, he said with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. Turning to Alara, he issued rapid-fire instructions. "Lieutenant, take the team and create a diversion. Draw its attention away from the center mass." Alara nodded sharply, her cybernetic implants already calculating trajectories and energy dispersal patterns. "Understood, Captain. Just return in one piece." With that, she activated the team's emergency beacons, creating a dazzling light show that immediately drew the null harmonic's attention. As the creature turned toward the new stimulus, Valen sprinted in the opposite direction, using the distraction to approach its flank. The closer he came to the entity, the more reality itself seemed to warp around him. Gravity fluctuated wildly. One moment he felt weightless, the next crushed by forces that threatened to flatten his organs. The very air became viscous, each breath requiring conscious effort. Most disorienting were the temporal distortions. Moments stretched into what felt like hours, then compressed again without warning. Through it all, the crystal in his hand pulsed steadily, its rhythm somehow anchoring him against the chaos. He pushed forward, each step requiring more determination than the last. From the corner of his eye, he glimpsed Zephyra observing from a distance, her form flickering between visibility and transparency as though the entity's presence disrupted her very existence. What surprised him was her expression, not the detached assessment he had come to expect, but something akin to concern, perhaps even fear, not for herself but for him. The realization strengthened his resolve. He had promised to demonstrate humanity's evolution beyond conquest and exploitation. What better proof than self-sacrifice for the preservation of another species' existence? As he neared the void core, the pain intensified. His skin felt simultaneously frozen and burned, cellular integrity beginning to fail under the extreme conditions. The crystal in his hand grew almost unbearably hot, its pulsations accelerating to match the frantic rhythm of his heart. 50 seconds left, 45, 40. With a final surge of effort, Velen launched himself toward the pulsating node at the creature's center. As he penetrated the outer layers of anti-light, his consciousness began to fragment, memories and sensations disassociating from one another. He clung to a single thought. The crystal must touch the void core. 30 seconds. 25. The entity sensed his presence now, its amorphous form contracting to protect its nucleus. Tendrils of anti-light lashed out, slicing through his environment suit and searing the flesh beneath. Pain exploded across his nervous system, but he pushed through it, focusing on his objective with single-minded determination. 20 seconds. 15. The void core loomed before him now, a perfect sphere of nothingness that somehow still emanated malevolent purpose. As Valen reached toward it, time itself seemed to pause, the moment extending into infinity. In that suspended instant, he became aware of another presence joining with his consciousness. Zephyra, somehow projecting herself into his mind, despite the barriers between them. Her mental touch carried both astonishment and a strange form of respect. "You would sacrifice yourself for a world not your own?" her thought voice inquired, bewilderment evident. "For life wherever it exists," he responded silently. "That's the principle we aspire to, even when we fall short." A sensation that might have been admiration flowed from her consciousness to his. Then, unexpectedly, she shared something else, knowledge, compressed and encoded in a form his human brain could barely comprehend. The exact frequency pattern needed to neutralize the null harmonic, more precise than what the crystal alone could provide. Together then, her thought voice concluded. With renewed purpose, Valen thrust the crystal toward the void core. As the two made contact, he channeled the frequency pattern Zephyra had shared, using his own life energy as a conduit to amplify its effect. The result was cataclysmic. A shockwave of pure harmonic energy erupted from the point of contact, radiating outward in concentric spheres. The null harmonic convulsed, its anti-light structure inverting as the fundamental frequency realigned its chaotic elements into coherent patterns. Valen felt himself falling, consciousness fading as the last of his strength poured into the crystal. His final sensation was of arms catching him, strong yet gentle, radiating an energy that somehow soothed his failing systems. Then darkness claimed him, absolute and complete. When awareness returned, it came in fragments. First sensation, the feel of something smooth and cool beneath him. Then sound, a crystalline humming that seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. Finally sight. As his eyes fluttered open, he found himself lying on a platform of living crystal, surrounded by the now familiar structures of Lumina's central hub. Zephyra knelt beside him, her triangular eyes studying him with an intensity that suggested she was seeing something far beyond his physical form. The pendant had been returned to her throat, though it now pulsed with a slightly different rhythm than before. "You continue to defy categorization, Valen Mercer," she said, his name sounding musical in her harmonic voice. "Few beings of any species would risk dissolution for another's harmony." Valen attempted to sit up, wincing as his body reminded him of the trauma it had endured. "Did it work?" he asked, voice rough. "The null harmonic reharmonized," she confirmed with a slight inclination of her head, "though not without cost. The crystal absorbed your unique frequency pattern during the realignment process. It now carries an echo of your essence, something unprecedented in our records." She helped him to his feet, her touch generating a strange resonance that seemed to accelerate his body's healing processes. Around them, the other luminary observed with expressions ranging from wary curiosity to outright astonishment. Where's my team? Valen asked, suddenly concerned for their welfare. Unharmed, Zafira assured him. They have been returned to the physical plane. The council wished to speak with you privately before determining their verdict. As if summoned by her words, a group of luminari emerged from behind the heart of Lumina. They moved with the fluid grace characteristic of their species, but with an added gravitas that marked them as leadership. At their center walked an elder whose skin had faded to a pale silver, three eyes deeply recessed in a face etched with what appeared to be living circuit patterns. He carried a staff topped with a crystal identical to Zephyr's pendant, though significantly larger. I am Elder Thalen, the ancient being announced, his voice a complex harmony of tones that the translation matrix struggled to render accurately. Keeper of the seventh resonance and guardian of Lumina's memory. You have disrupted our harmony, human, yet paradoxically restored it as well. Valen straightened, ignoring the protest of his injured body. Elder Thalen, I come seeking understanding, not conflict. What happened with the null harmonic was not our intention. The elder studied him, all three eyes unblinking. Intention and outcome rarely achieve perfect harmony, even among the luminary. However, your actions, when confronted with dissolution, reveal a frequency pattern had not anticipated in your species. He turned to Zephyra. Guardian, you have observed these humans most closely. What is your assessment? Zephyr's gaze briefly met Valen's before addressing the elder. They possess dissonance, as do all conscious beings, but they also demonstrate remarkable adaptive resonance, particularly this one. She gestured toward Valen. He carries potential for harmony, despite his foreign nature. Elder Thalen considered this, the staff in his hand pulsing in rhythm with his contemplation. Finally, he nodded. Very well. The humans may remain under observation. They will be granted limited access to Lumina's outer harmonies, but the deep resonances remain restricted. They are your responsibility, Guardian Zephyra. With that pronouncement, the elder and his entourage departed, leaving Valen alone with Zephyra once more. She turned to him, her expression softening fractionally. You should rejoin your team, she said. There is much you need to understand about Lumina if you are to avoid further disruptions. As they walked through the crystal forest, Zephyra explained fragments of luminary history, their evolution from energy-sensitive organisms to beings who existed partially in quantum states, their development of crystal technology that amplified and channeled their natural abilities, and their role as harmony keepers in this sector of the galaxy. Valen listened intently, filing away information that would prove invaluable for establishing diplomatic relations. Yet beneath his professional focus, he couldn't ignore the strange connection he felt with this alien being, a resonance that transcended species barriers and challenged his understanding of consciousness itself. They arrived at a secluded grove where bioluminescent flora created a peaceful sanctuary. His team had been settled there, their injuries treated with luminary healing techniques that left no visible traces of the ordeal they had endured. Rest, Zephyra instructed. Tomorrow we begin anew. As the team dispersed to explore their temporary haven, Valen remained behind, watching Zephyra with undisguised curiosity. Something in her posture suggested a weight beyond the physical, responsibility perhaps, or isolation. You didn't have to intervene when the null harmonic appeared, he said quietly. You risked your standing with the council to help us. Zephyra turned to him, her triangular eyes searching his face as though seeking something hidden beneath the surface. For a long moment she remained silent. Then with unexpected candor she replied, because you demonstrated something I had forgotten. That true harmony isn't the absence of difference, but the integration of diverse frequencies into a greater whole. Her words resonated with meaning beyond their literal translation. Before Valen could respond, she turned away, her form blending with the crystal light as she departed. Left alone in the luminescent grove, he couldn't shake the feeling that a fundamental shift had occurred, not just in diplomatic relations, but in something far more personal and profound. The following days unfolded in a rhythm of discovery and gradual trust building. Under Zephyra's guidance, the humans were introduced to the outer layers of luminary society. Their crystal-based technology that operated on principles of quantum resonance rather than electronic computation, their communal consciousness that allowed limited thought sharing while preserving individual identity, and their art forms that manipulated energy patterns to create experiences beyond mere visual or auditory stimulation. Valen absorbed it all with genuine fascination, his natural curiosity overriding the caution that typically characterized his approach to alien cultures. He found himself drawing parallels between luminary philosophy and certain Earth traditions that emphasized harmony with natural forces, though the luminary had evolved these concepts to levels humans had only theorized about. Most intriguing were his conversations with Zephyra during the quiet evening hours when her official duties concluded. Gradually, her formal detachment gave way to a more nuanced exchange, revealing glimpses of the individual beneath the guardian mantle. The role chose me rather than the reverse, she explained during one such conversation, as they sat beside a pool of liquid crystal that reflected the twin moons of Lumina. My frequency pattern resonated with the seventh harmonic from emergence. It is both gift and burden, to perceive the dissonances that others cannot detect, to maintain balance even at personal cost. The pendant at her throat pulsed gently as she spoke, its rhythm synchronizing with the ripples in the crystal pool. Valen noticed how its glow had subtly altered since the incident with the null harmonic, now occasionally flashing with a frequency that matched his own heartbeat. Duty can be isolating, he acknowledged, thinking of his own experiences as a starship captain, responsible for lives and decisions that separated him from those under his command. Finding meaning within constraint is perhaps a universal challenge. Zephyra's head tilted, her expression softening in the moonlight. You speak from resonant experience, she observed. Perhaps our species are not as discordant as initial harmonics suggested. The moment of connection lingered between them, charged with possibilities neither had anticipated when they first encountered each other. But before it could develop further, a commotion erupted from the direction of the human encampment. A luminary scout approached at speed, his crystalline armor emitting distress frequencies that required no translation. "Guardian," he called out, coming to an abrupt halt before them. "Void ships approach, human vessels, heavily armed. They have breached the outer harmonics and approached the surface with weapons activated." Valen's heart sank as he realized what had happened. The Horizon Seeker had failed to make scheduled contact, triggering standard emergency protocols. Reinforcements would have been dispatched, warships operating under the assumption that the exploration team had encountered hostiles. Zephyra's reaction was immediate and severe. Her body tensed, the scales of her armor shifting to a combat configuration as her eyes narrowed to vertical slits. "You promised peace," she hissed, her harmonious voice distorting with barely contained fury. "Yet your kind brings destruction to our doorstep." "This isn't what it seems," Valen insisted, rising to his feet. "Standard protocol when an exploration vessel fails to report in. They're coming to investigate, not to attack. But if they encounter resistance, they'll respond in kind. Let me contact them. I can prevent this from escalating." For a tense moment, Zephyra's hand hovered near the weapon at her waist, her expression unreadable. Then, with visible effort, she controlled her initial reaction. "Go," she commanded tersely. "But know this, if your words prove false, if your kind brings harm to Lumina, not even our connection will stay my hand." The implied threat needed no elaboration. Valen nodded grimly and sprinted toward the human encampment, mind racing through diplomatic options. Everything they had built over the past days, the tentative trust, the cultural exchange, the personal connection, now balanced on a knife's edge. By the time he reached the landing zone, the situation had already developed far beyond ideal. 3 Union warships had descended through Lumina's atmosphere, their weapons systems fully charged and targeting arrays active. Troops had deployed in defensive formation, scanners sweeping the area for potential threats. At their center stood Admiral Iris Caval, her weathered face set in the stern expression that had earned her the nickname, the Granite Commander, across 5 sectors. Her silver-gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her uniform bore the insignia of 27 successful campaigns. "Captain Mercer," she acknowledged as he approached, her tone clipped. "Your team has been out of contact for 7 standard days. Explain." Valen came to attention out of ingrained respect, though technically their mission placed him outside her direct chain of command. Admiral, we've established peaceful contact with an advanced civilization. The Luminary possessed technology based on principles entirely different from our own, which interfered with standard communications. Koval's eyes narrowed skeptically. Our sensors detected weapons-grade energy discharges in this region shortly after your landing. That doesn't sound like peaceful contact to me, Captain. A misunderstanding that has since been resolved, Valen insisted, conscious of time slipping away. With each passing moment, Luminary sensors would be detecting the warship's offensive capabilities, potentially triggering their own defensive measures. Admiral, I respectfully request that you stand down your forces immediately. The Luminary are cautious but not hostile, unless provoked. The Admiral studied him carefully, decades of combat experience evident in her assessing gaze. You've gone native in less than a week, Mercer? That's not like you. Not native, Admiral, informed. The Luminary possess cultural and technological achievements we can learn from, but only if we approach as equals, not potential conquerors. He gestured toward the deployed troops and activated weapon systems. This display projects exactly the wrong message. Before Koval could respond, movement at the perimeter caught their attention. Zephyra had arrived, accompanied by a contingent of Luminary warriors whose crystalline armor pulsed with barely contained energy. They formed a precise formation at the edge of the clearing, neither advancing nor retreating, a clear statement of territorial presence. Zephyra stepped forward, her full height emphasized by the ceremonial headdress she now wore. The pendant at her throat glowed with increased intensity, and subtle energy patterns danced across her skin like living circuitry. You bring instruments of discord to our world, she announced, her harmonious voice carrying easily across the distance. Why should we permit your continued existence? Admiral Koval tensed, her hand moving subtly toward her sidearm. Valen stepped between them, physically positioning himself as an intermediary. Guardian Zephyra, this is Admiral Iris Koval of the Earth Union Exploration Fleet. Her ships came in response to our misted communications. Standard protocol, not aggression. He turned to face the Admiral. Admiral, this is Zephyra, Guardian of the 7th Resonance and Protector of Lumina. Her people have hosted us peacefully and shared knowledge freely once initial misunderstandings were resolved. Tension crackled in the air between the two forces, each poised at the edge of conflict. Koval's expression remained skeptical, while Zephyra's triangular eyes narrowed dangerously. Prove your peaceful intent, Zephyra demanded, addressing Koval directly. Deactivate your weapons and approach unarmed. Only then will the Council consider granting audience to more of your kind. The request hung heavily in the space between them. Koval hesitated, decades of military training warring with diplomatic necessity. Finally, she gave a curt nod. Stand down weapons, she ordered her troops. Defensive posture only. The tension decreased marginally as the human forces lowered their weapons, though they remained vigilantly alert. Koval stepped forward to stand beside Valen, her ramrod straight posture and unflinching gaze meeting Zephyra's alien scrutiny with equal intensity. I come representing the Earth Union, she stated formally. Our primary directive is the protection of our exploration teams. Demonstrate that Captain Mercer's team is here by choice rather than coercion, and we can proceed diplomatically. Zephyra considered this, her head tilting in that characteristic angle that Valen had come to recognize as thoughtful assessment. Finally, she inclined her head slightly. Acceptable terms, she conceded. Follow, but know that any deviation from harmonious conduct will be met with immediate response. With that tenuous agreement established, the tense standoff gradually evolved into a cautious diplomatic exchange. Zephyra led the human representatives, Valen, Koval, and a small contingent of senior officers, toward the heart of Lumina, where Elder Thalen and the Council awaited. The journey provided opportunity for Valen to brief the Admiral on luminary culture and the significance of the location they approached. The crystal formations aren't just aesthetic, Admiral, he explained in hushed tones. They're semi-sentient information networks, both technological and biological. The luminary exist in partial quantum superposition with their environment. Their concept of harmony isn't merely philosophical. It's the literal resonance between consciousness and reality. Koval absorbed this with the pragmatic focus that had characterized her legendary career. And their defensive capabilities? I'm not walking my people into a trap, Mercer. Formidable but proportional, he replied honestly. They could have obliterated our landing party multiple times, but chose assessment over elimination. That alone speaks volumes. As they entered the central hub where the heart of Lumina pulsed with rhythmic energy, Koval fell momentarily silent, the awe-inspiring spectacle temporarily overwhelming even her battle-hardened composure. Elder Thalin awaited them, surrounded by the Council of Residents, whose members observed the humans with expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. The Elder's ancient eyes seemed to look through rather than at them, perceiving layers of reality beyond normal human comprehension. So, he began, his harmonious voice resonating throughout the chamber. More humans seek audience with Lumina. Your dissonance patterns are strong, yet not uniformly destructive. Curious. Koval stepped forward, maintaining the diplomatic protocol Valen had hastily outlined. Elder Thalin, I represent the Earth Union Exploration Initiative. We seek peaceful exchange of knowledge and respectful coexistence. Captain Mercer reports that your civilization has shown both wisdom and restraint. We wish to build upon the foundation he has established. The Elder's three eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Valen had learned indicated deep consideration. Words vibrate with intent, Thaden observed. Yours carry the resonance of truth mingled with caution. Appropriate, given our limited harmonization. He turned to Zephyra, who had taken position beside him. Guardian, you have observed these humans most closely. What say you to this proposed expansion of contact? Zephyra's gaze swept over the assembled humans before settling on Valen. Something passed between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the connection that had formed, unexpected yet undeniable. I propose a covenant, she announced, addressing both her own people and the human delegation. A structured harmonization that allows for controlled exchange while preserving Lumina's fundamental frequencies. Limited access, measured integration, mutual protection. She stepped forward, the pendant at her throat pulsing in time with the heart of Lumina above. But remember this, any disruption to our harmony will be met with immediate and final discord. This is not threat, but natural consequence. Elder Thalin considered her proposal, the staff in his hand resonating with the surrounding crystal structures as though consulting some vast, distributed intelligence. Finally, he nodded. So be it, let the Starlight Covenant commence. The formal negotiations that followed established the framework for human luminary relations, designated contact zones, protocols for knowledge exchange, safeguards against cultural contamination, and contingencies for dispute resolution. Throughout the process, Valen served as primary interpreter, his unique experience with both cultures proving invaluable. As the diplomatic party prepared to return to the human vessels with the initial agreement, Zephyra drew Valen aside, leading him to a secluded alcove where crystal formations created a natural privacy barrier. Your frequency has altered since our first encounter, she observed, her triangular eyes studying him with that penetrating gaze that seemed to perceive his very essence. The resonance pattern shows greater harmony, despite or perhaps because of the challenges faced. Valen smiled slightly. I could say the same about you. Your touch me once and I won't spare you introduction seems like a lifetime ago. To his surprise, Zephyra's features softened into what might have been the luminary equivalent of amusement. Initial harmonization is rarely perfect, she acknowledged. Adjustment requires time and mutual resonance. Her hand rose to the pendant at her throat, which continued to occasionally pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, a permanent reminder of their shared experience with the null harmonic. This connection was unexpected, she said softly, a vulnerability in her tone he had rarely heard. In preserving Lumina's harmony, I have discovered dissonances within my own frequency that I had not recognized. Your presence amplifies them. The admission clearly cost her something, perhaps a disruption to her self-perception or role identity. Valen understood the sensation all too well. His own carefully constructed professional detachment had been irrevocably altered by their encounters. Where I come from, we call that growth, he replied gently. Harmonies that never change become stagnant. Perhaps true resonance requires occasional disruption. Her three eyes studied him with renewed intensity. Your species conceptualizes through metaphor rather than direct frequency perception. Fascinating and not entirely disharmonious. The moment between them lengthened, charged with possibilities neither had anticipated when they first encountered each other. Finally, Zephyra extended her six-fingered hand, palm upward, a gesture he had learned signified trust among the luminary. The covenant begins, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that the translation matrix couldn't fully render. But perhaps it is merely the surface manifestation of a deeper resonance. Valen placed his hand above hers, not quite touching, respecting the luminary custom that limited physical contact to moments of significant ceremonial importance. The energy field between their palms created a visible aurora of shifting colors, their distinct frequency patterns interacting in complex, beautiful configurations. To new harmonies, he said simply. Her lips curved in that not quite smile he had come to recognize, and to the dissonance that makes them meaningful. As the twin suns of Lumina set beyond the crystal horizon, casting prismatic rainbows across the landscape, the first tentative notes of the Starlight Covenant began to play, a symphony of human and luminary cooperation that would eventually transform both civilizations in ways neither could fully predict. In the glow of the heart of Lumina, a human captain and an alien guardian contemplated the future, not just of their respective peoples, but of the unique connection that had formed between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with a fundamental truth now understood. True harmony wasn't the absence of difference, but the integration of diverse frequencies into something greater than either could achieve alone.